Hello, and welcome back to Never Is Funny, the show where I, Patrick, talk to funny people and hope to God that they talk back. Now, I am about to say something that I say so often, and now reference the fact that I say so often. It is starting to feel parodical. However, A, I always mean it, and B, I really, really mean it this time, I swear. I have got a very exciting guest. This is Gareth Gwynn, comedy writer, performer, radio presenter, and now stand-up. He's got a very cool show, which he's bringing to Edinburgh Fringe extremely last minute. This immediately raised him in my esteem because extremely last minute is the only way I experience life. We talk about the many things he's worked on and the many people he's worked with in this, but most importantly, we talk about his new show, Cyril. He's got a ton of interesting things to say, to the point where it low-key made me a worse interviewer, because I'd get so engaged in listening to him, I'd forget I was supposed to be asking questions. Also, I'm Patrick O'Connell, and he's Gareth Gwynn, so this episode is a big win for people with hereditarily cliche names. I never know what to say to transition into the title music, so bon appetit. Welcome back to the show, where I talk to comedians in the know. That's right, it's Never As Funny. It's Never As Funny. The show's it's called Never As Funny. It's the name of the show, by the way. Never As Funny. It's the gist of it, the name. The show's called Never. This is like the title music. It's called Never As Funny. All right. Welcome back to Never Is Funny, everyone. A very exciting guest on this time. Although I'm inclined to think I should stop saying kind of that, because it's sort of, every time I go, I got a great guest this time, sort of implies that the previous ones weren't so good.
Let me be the first one who is distinctly average. Let me be the first one who I'm fine with this. This will be okay. I'm very happy to take that hit.
Brilliant. I finally got someone at my level. That's very good. But yes, you've got a very prolific amount of work, but I think kind of central to your career, arguably, is that you have a scar on your left hand. And in your email, you said this to me, it made me laugh out loud, because you said you have a scar on your left hand, which is how you know you're right from left.
Yeah, 100%. I put my hand on an iron when I was... between the age of like 1 and 2, I was a baby, basically, and I put my hand flat on an iron, and it's left scar. Let me hold it up to the Zoom call to see if you can see. I don't know if you can see it actually on the Zoom call.
I'm not sure.
In person, it's quite distinctive. There's like a sort of V-shaped scar there. It's quite big. In reality, it's very, very noticeable. But
yes, you
I've
can
got this
see
big
it.
scar across my left hand, which means that if I clench my fist, I can feel it. And at that age where you are learning your left and right, that was my little trick, that the left one is the one with the scar. So that was fine. I learned my left and right immediately. It was like that. And I think deep down that is probably still what I do. I think it's probably... Well, here's the thing. I'm back on stage for the first time in ages, doing a live show, which is something I've very much been a writer for years and years and years. So going back on stage has been quite a new thing. I am slightly shocked how bad my memory is. And I'm constantly having to have notes and things like that around me to remind me of what happens next and where things go. And I think it started with the hand. I think it started with, at the age of about 3, going like, always having a reminder on yourself as to which one's left and right. I think from that point on, I've always looked for lazy ways to remind myself of something so I don't have to use it for key brain space.
That's a fascinating insight. Also, great life hack for the listeners. If any of you have a child who's kind of struggling to learn left and right, get yourself a cast iron.
I think a better piece of advice would be, if you have a scar already, maybe use it to help distinguish your left and right. I wouldn't go in scar first. I feel like I don't think that's something you can put on a podcast. It's got to be of your own volition. You can't go scarring anyone. But equivalently, I think if you're over the age of 18 and you haven't worked out your left and your right, I think there's bigger fish to fry.
That's true. Emphasis on the frying. So, but yes, so other than that key quality, you've done a lot of things. Currently, you've got the show Cyril. I think to begin with, I like to ask a lot what your sort of self-descriptor is, because you mentioned you haven't done performing in a while. You're mostly a writer. what's your go-to, like, if you're introducing yourself to someone, like, hey, I'm Gareth, and I'm
Oh, yeah, it's definitely comedy writer. That's always the number one thing. Yeah, it's comedy writer. For the last 15 years or so, I've kind of moved between 3 jobs, which has been comedy writing, radio presenting, and producing. And I've slid between all 3. But comedy writing is the main one. Comedy writing is the way I have earned the majority of my living for the last 15 years or so. Probably a bit longer, actually. So that's the main one. Radio presenting is a thing that I can turn my hand to, and I have done for a bit.
Right.
And I really enjoy doing. I absolutely love doing it. And production is something which I kind of came through production. I was a radio producer before I became a full-time comedy writer. And I love doing it, and it is still something I will do as a freelancer kind of thing. I think what happened was, around the time when I was maybe 26, 27, I was getting offers of work for production jobs, and I was saying yes to them, and then you're tied into producing a show then for like 10 weeks. Right. And then a writing job would come along, and then I'd go like, I'd rather do that actually. Like there were clashes coming is what was happening. And I had to go, which of these would you rather do? Like, what I had to do is in my head go, order them. And I distinctly remember in about 2010, going, right, you're a comedy writer first. That is your job. You are a radio presenter second, and you're a producer third. And just doing that helped me distinguish what jobs I should take and how. And what that meant was, if I got offered a production job that was a long way away, it took a little bit of confidence to kind of go, no, I'm going to say no to this. And I'm going to hold my nerve and hope that writing work will come in. And that was a little bit of in my head, I have to order these jobs. So, all this to say, I have given this question some thought. I definitely, if I'm stopped in the street and someone says, what do you do? I always say comedy writer first.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, it's a commendable attribute to have, I think, because it's so true in this industry. It's very difficult to say no to things, especially like, as you said, I think you said it was kind of in your 20s, you laid that decision. And when you're starting out, you're in a position where it's not like you take a job and then immediately that's it. There's a lot of like, well, I'm going to do this now, and then it's going to build up a portfolio.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of FOMO of like, what if maybe I need to be doing more this or more that? So I'm curious, is that still the case now? Like, is this show you're doing more of a one-off, or are you kind of thinking like this is a new direction? Oh,
yeah, that's interesting. So just to sort of put a bit of background to this,
yes,
I did stand-up when I first started doing comedy. So I did stand-up in sort of 2006. So I was quite fresh out of university. I'd done a lot of student radio, and that was really what I wanted. I wanted to do radio comedy. That was the goal. And trying to get into that world felt quite hard. And I had demos that I was quite proud of, and I was sending up, and I was getting a lot of good feedback, and I was getting so I had a show on a local radio station, but to do the sort of thing I wanted to do, I thought, you're going to have to attack this from all angles. So I started doing stand-up, and I never really felt like that was ever my strongest suit. And what happened was, as soon as then radio comedy stuff started, I got a job for XFM South Wales, which was producing a breakfast show. It was a very like comedy-focused breakfast show. So I was like, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And as well, you had to get up at 4 a.m. in order to work on a breakfast show. So that was the point at which I sort of went, I'm going to kind of knock stand-up on the head for a bit.
Right.
And then from that, I ended up becoming, I got a job in London as a comedy writer, as a staff writer for the BBC. And that meant I was writing jokes every day. And so from that point on, in terms of performing, I would do little bits here and there, but I never really went back to stand-up in any big way. What's happened in the last couple of years is a couple of things. One was I started doing a podcast with Essex Sears. Called I'm So Not Over It. And we started to do a couple of live shows. It's a podcast about history, modern history. We start from 1977 and go from there.
Okay, cool.
So it's all modern history. And we started doing this podcast and we would interview people on stage. And what I found really interesting about doing the live shows is I started to really enjoy doing the live shows.
Right.
And one of the reasons was, I think, Esilt and I as a double act, I think it immediately made sense on stage. I think we're quite different personalities. Like, one of the jokes that we do when we do a live show is that we say we have turned up dressed as we were dressed in the 90s, and she will wear something that she would have worn in the 90s, and I will wear my school uniform. Because I'm like, I was at school in the 90s. And there was something about me being the one who turned up in their school uniform for these live shows that I think made audiences go, oh, right, he's that guy.
Right.
And there was something about when we did the live shows of us as a double act where I kind of went, oh, right, that's kind of who I am on stage. You know, like there was something clicked in my head. And I've known, because I worked with stand-ups through all these years, I know how important your on-stage persona is and what you are saying to an audience when you're on stage and all this sort of stuff. So I always knew that these things were important, and I just never really felt like I'd cracked them on stage for myself. Doing the podcast live show, I went, hang on, I've got a bit of an inkling of this. And then separate to this, there was an incident where I got asked to speak at an event about my great-grandfather, who was a poet. I never met him. He died when I was 4 or 5 in Australia on the other side of the world. Right. So I never met this great-grandfather, but he's quite an interesting character. And I got asked to speak at an event about him. And so I wrote a little bit about him and I put gags in it. And it was a couple of things, which was doing that event made me go, this is a genuinely very interesting story.
Right.
The manner in which I got asked to do the event was an interesting story. And for the first time, I felt like I had a comic persona that could tell that story.
I see. Okay.
You know, so like, I felt like I actually feel comfortable on stage telling this story. So and then I wrote the show as an hour in one big go, kind of going like, this was the story. I did it in Machynlleth Comedy Festival in 2023. And I went, oh, that's a fun story. I like this.
Right.
But I listened back to the audio straight away and I went, but you're not good enough at performing it. Straight away, I just went, you sound like a man out of practice.
Right.
So what I did is I booked some nights in the Camden Fringe this year.
Yeah.
And then I made myself go back to doing open spots and open mic nights. And I have just been gigging 3 nights a week, doing 5-minute sets, just to feel comfortable on stage, to work out. Now I've kind of gone, oh, this is what you are on stage, you know, to work that out a bit, which is much closer to what I am in real life, is the truth. Like, I don't feel like I'm affecting anything really. It's just a matter of making sure the version of you coming across makes sense. And it's all things that I just didn't do when I was 20. I now have the uniform I wear on stage. I always wear exactly the same clothes on stage.
Yes, I like that.
And I've got spare clothes for if anything happens to them, I've got a jumper that's very similar. You know, so like, and it's all part of, I think I have to make sure it's that best foot forward thing. Like, where I go on stage, people go like, I think I got a handle on what this guy is. I also think, to be honest, I think I make more sense as a person at the age of 40 than I did at the age of 25. I think there's just something about me at the age of 40 where, like, yeah, he's a guy who likes old telly, I'd buy that. Whereas I think as a 25-year-old, I think I just came across as weird. And I think there's, so that's all been key to it. And the truth of the matter is, I enjoy it far more. I never really particularly enjoyed doing stand-up, and this time round, and I don't know if it's the fact that I knew as well, I was practicing for a show that I was actually quite excited by. I was practicing for a show that I'd written and I went, I think it's a good story. Like, I knew I hadn't, and there was something quite weird about going to these open mic nights. And I know I'm practicing for something completely different for everyone else.
Yes.
There's something about that just makes you feel slightly other. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I just need to do these 5-minute sets so I can one day tell a story about a man from 100 years ago. Like, right. I don't know, there's something about going there with a different agenda. I think it just means that, I don't know, I'll go on stage and I'll tell a story about a man from 100 years ago, and it's like, well, I'll guarantee no one else is doing that on stage at the moment.
Yes,
so I think that helped a bit as well. It just gave, I don't know, there's I think a sense of purpose. One of the things I always struggled with stand-up first time round in my 20s was like, why are you here? Why are you speaking to me? I always loved Josie Long.
Yeah.
She ran some really interesting gigs in London when I first moved here. And even though I'd quit stand-up, she'd still book me for them. But the thing is that you had to talk about a person you were interested in.
Okay.
And you had to write the material bespoke for the night. And I loved that because that gave me a reason for being there. You know, so
yes.
and I always loved that. And I think what I've done with this is find that reason. Is I've gone, oh, this is the reason. Me telling this story is the reason for me to come back to going on stage. So as for whether this is like a one-off or a sort of more permanent thing, that bit I don't know. At the moment, my head is entirely in making sure I tell the story of my great-grandfather as well as I possibly can. And it's all the stuff around him. It's a lot of the show is to do with me having to research it.
Right.
And that's more the sort of drive of it, is the fact that I know this guy's got an interesting life story, but it's how I piece it together is a lot of the show. I think I would, I don't know, let's see, but I think I would need another moment like that. Do you know what I mean? I think I would need another, like, I think I need a big engine. I think I need a reason to be on stage. I think I will always struggle to go on stage and people are brilliant at it. But people who are just like, hey, do you know what's been bothering me today? I don't think I'm that guy. I think it's got to be, do you know what's been bothering me for 30 years? I think that's got to be my, like... Do you know what problem has been hanging over me for years? It's this. I think that's got to be my thing. Yeah, that's how I feel at the moment. I'm sure if you ask me another day, it won't be that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's great to hear. I mean, it sounds like that gave you such a sense of purpose and confidence. I am curious with the open mics, because you said it's been a long time since you've done them, and you're suddenly kind of doing these again to sort of like coach yourself into doing the full show. Were you doing little chunks of the show, or were you trying out lots of different things?
I started to do little chunks of the show. Yeah.
Okay.
So like I say, I wrote the show in one big block. I wrote it as an hour, just like bang, that's all of it. And there were maybe 2 or 3 routines in it that felt like they could work as individual 5-minute routines.
Okay, yeah.
So they were the ones where I went, right, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make them work. That was like genuinely my first plan was there's huge chunks of the show that I could only really do as part of the show. There's a whole bit of the show where my great-grandfather met and became friends with Winston Churchill's son.
Oh my God.
And it's very weird because he's a farmer from Gower and Winston Churchill's son is Winston Churchill's son.
Yes.
But their paths crossed and they ended up becoming friends. So it's a very weird bit of the tale. There's absolutely no way I can do that in 5 minutes in an open mic spot because I have to explain who my great-grandfather Cyril Gwynn was. I have to explain why he's suddenly hanging around a college in England, given he's a farmer in Wales. I've got to explain who Randolph Churchill is because he's a sticky customer to explain. So those bits are like, there's only one way to do them, and that's to do them in the middle of a show. But the couple of anecdotes that are slightly more personal ones at the start of the show that sort of set me up as a character, they stand alone. And so those I was able to sort of farm out and go, right, we're going to make these work one by one. And that's what I did, basically. And I had 3 or 4 routines that I cycled around as many open mic spots as I could, which meant I was booking them very close together and coming back with a different 5 minutes. Because I was a bit like, I did it also. I wouldn't recommend anyone try and do anything like this, but it was also truncated. As soon as I got it to a stage where I went, I think that's okay. I'm like, I'm happy to move on and then start working up the next bit. And then I'll let that percolate a bit and go back to it. What you got to remember is I spent the last 15 years working in largely topical comedy.
Yes.
So to be honest, getting a second shot to say anything is a treat.
Right.
So the idea of being able to go like, and then I'll come back in a month and it'll have 6 new jokes in it. That's great. That's the bit we never got to do when we did the Now Show or anything like that.
I mean, speaking of that, I mean, you got so much. If I let myself ask all the questions I wanted to ask, it could easily be like a 7-hour podcast. But writing the stand-up, like you said, you wrote that 1 hour in one go and then kind of, just practiced it. Does it feel like a big departure from your previous work on radio and comedy writing and things? Or is it very much like, I don't know, like, does this feel like it could just be a written comedy piece? Or is it a very different type of...
It is a bit different. There's a couple of things I do that I think sort of point towards writing an hour in the way that I've done, which again, I don't think it's a normal way to do it. And I think it comes from being a guy who's written for other people for a long time and then has to sort of turn the gun on himself, as it were, and then kind of do. But when you do gags for the news quiz or the Now Show or those sort of topical shows, that's a different problem, really. That's a lot of the time you're kind of trying to explain a news story, which was always a thing I quite enjoyed doing, breaking it down, finding links between things like that. I think those things often feel a little bit like puzzle solving, those sort of things, especially when you're in jobs where your job is to write a lot of jokes. Yes. So when I used to I worked a lot on the news quiz during the Sandy Toksvig era when she was hosting that. And the way that would work once you'd been there for a bit was that you'd be kind of given a news story and then you'd have a morning or an afternoon to write. You'd aim to write about 3 pages of jokes on that topic. You wanted a few that would really sum up the story that she would read at the end of the round, which would be like, yes, this is the story that, and then like truncate the story into a little paragraph. And then you would want ones that felt a little bit more in the moment, slightly silly ones that you could like pepper elsewhere. And the interesting thing about them is the ones at the top would be the ones, I say top because it's top of the page in my head, but the ones that would like wrap up the story, they have to be quite factual. They have to tell the story with jokes. Okay. The ones that are conversational, they have to be maybe a little bit more personal, and that's when it's all about finding someone's voice, and kind of writing something that sounds like something Sandy Toksvig would say or sound like something Miles Jupp would say. Yeah. So that's that, and I really enjoy doing that. I still enjoy doing that. I got to work on Catherine Bohart's Radio 4 show about 2 weeks ago, and that was lovely, just to go back into that world of writing topical jokes, writing for a really strong comic persona, like someone where the audience go, I know who that person is, and then writing jokes that chime with that. Great. I absolutely love doing that. What happened, I think, doing quite a lot of that, was I started to get jobs which I really enjoyed doing, which were, I would be put on shows as a script editor, as a kind of friend of a stand-up who had a great comic character and help them almost work out what they were going to be on the radio.
I see, okay.
And I really enjoyed doing those jobs. I was really lucky. I worked with Felicity Ward, who's one of my favourite stand-ups, and we did 2 series of a show on Radio 4 called Episodes, which was all about apps which pertain to help with mental health. Yeah. And, these were things that Felicity was very confident talking about on stage. And a lot of the time, as a script editor, I think it was kind of helping her go like, and this is how we're going to make this work on radio and things like that. And I love doing that. And we worked together really well. She is absolutely fantastic. And I really enjoyed working as well with Tudor Owen on his Radio 4 shows, where Tudor Owen is a brilliant stand-up. He's a really good friend. We've written loads together for BBC Wales and S4C. He's fantastic. He had these really interesting... He did a stand-up series about Anglesey, and then he had these stories from his life, which we did as kind of sort of... I was going to say they weren't monologues. They were like radio dramas where he told them and the characters would come in and out. And he did one called Zoo, which was the true story of his dad opening a zoo on Anglesey, which was it's a hysterically funny story. And we did one called The United Nations of Anglesey about a summer when a lot of people from around the world came to stay on their farm. And those shows, I think what I really enjoyed, again, with that is working with someone who's such a brilliant stand-up and then taking those stories, sometimes ones he's told on stage, and sort of like transferring them over to radio and helping do that. And what I think then, I wonder if I've sort of like, this is the mathematician in me coming out now, is it's almost like doing the reverse, is that for a while I was the guy who maybe helped people who were stand-ups work out how they fit on radio. Yeah. And then I think I became a radio guy who was like, right, how the bloody hell do I become a stand-up? And so I think I was kind of doing the inverse job to myself almost. And taking a lot of that stuff that I'd been... I think I've learned so much from all the stand-ups I've worked with over the years. People like Tidder and people like Felicity. I'm really good friends with John Luke Roberts. We've written loads together over the years. He is a phenomenal stand-up comedian. And I think just watching him year after year after year knock it out of the park with great show after great show, I think you kind of I don't know, I'd like to think I've learned something from this. I worked a lot with Julia Burton and things like that. So I suspect, without it ever being like fully conscious of it, I think I've spent so much time around stand-up comics that when I sat down to write an hour, I was like, I think I know how one of these works. And I didn't, I'm not going to pretend that I wrote an hour and I went nailed it. It was miles off, but I kind of went into it knowing how I wanted this hour to feel.
Right, yes.
I had a tone I was kind of aiming for. And I think possibly one of the things was I did it in Machynlleth in 2023.
Yes.
And I came off stage and I went, I do like that story, but that is not the tone. I was kind of like, there's something about this I like, but that's not it. And that's when I went back to doing stand-up a bit and trying to work out who I am so then I could work out the person who I am who can tell that story, as it were.
Right. That's brilliant. Okay, so I want to dive some more deeply into this show. We're coming towards the middle section, or the little break. Before we do that, if you would be able to provide like a little teaser of kind of summing up. I mean, I don't know, will you be... I don't know if you need to, but are you like flyering at all when you're up in Edinburgh?
I am flyering, yes. So the whole trip to Edinburgh has been laughably last minute. A week ago, I did not know I was going.
Right.
This has been an incredibly last minute thing. I booked the Camden Fringe run in July with the intention of working it up across a week. It was one of those things where I thought the only way you're going to do this is to do it day in, day out and just like bash it into shape.
Yeah.
So I did that with the Camden Fringe. And by the third night, I went, okay, this feels like a story now. It's got a bit of momentum. You know how it fits together. And I'd worked out how I could put Cyril's bits into my story. And so I was starting to feel like, okay, this is getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And I finished the Camden Fringe run and I was kind of going like, right, I need to do this again somewhere to keep working it up. And I was umming and ahhing where. And the truth of the matter was I had been speaking to some people about doing it in Cardiff.
Right.
Because at some point, I need my family to see it. Because when I did it in Machynlleth, I banned my family from coming to see it. And I literally put in the Machynlleth Comedy Festival brochure, family members are banned. And I had to tell my family, who'd been very helpful at like giving me information about Cyril, I had to go, you can't come. And the reason I couldn't let them come is it was way too early. Like I knew that show was not going to be the show. I knew it wasn't going to be in the ballpark because there were going to be bits that I'm just like, I don't want to fight for a bit where it's never going to go the distance.
Yes.
And as well, I didn't want them to see a version where maybe like the journey isn't worth the effort, as it were, where I'd sort of tell a long story and the gags aren't working. I needed it to actually feel like not a finished project, but I needed to feel like I had a bit of shape and a bit of momentum. So I banned them from seeing it in Machynlleth. By the end of the Camden Fringe run, I was like, I am happy for my uncle and aunts to see this. I think this is now in a state where they can see it. So that was what I thought the next stage was. I thought it was going to do it somewhere in Wales where they could come. And then what happened was I saw an Instagram post by Harriet Kensley. And that said that she had... It was like a thing for a hotel in Edinburgh.
Yes.
Where they were going to put on gigs. Yeah. And they basically went, if you've got a show, let us know. And we'll see if we can put you on. And I emailed them and I went, I have a show literally days ago I felt I was happy with for the first time. And I sent them a bit of the recording. And then they said, oh yeah, and that's when we started talking about dates and when it could happen. As such, at the time of speaking now, this time last week, I think I'd been availability checked for the run. Like it was. This has been quick. This has been very quick. So, question: am I flying? By God, yes, I'm flying because no one knows I'm doing it. So I'm incredibly grateful that I put a thing on Instagram, and this is a problem. I loathe social media, but it's like we've got to get involved with this, haven't we? So. And people have been brilliant, especially people who came to see it in Camden and went, right, he's not mucking around. It is an hour. It is right. It's going to happen. Like there's a show. So people have been brilliant about pushing it, and I'm gonna fly us so hard. In fact, just before I spoke to you, I was on the phone to a printers in Edinburgh going, I'm coming in at like 10 a.m. tomorrow. When can I pick them up? because my first show's at 4 and I'm going to shift a couple of hundred literally while my backpack is still on. So yes, I am flyering.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, so following that up, do you have a thing in mind for when you're flyering your people? What's your sort of pitch?
Oh,
this is a test.
I'm glad you've said this. Right, great. This is a good question. I don't know, because sometimes it's been so long since I've done it. The last time I did a show in Edinburgh that I was responsible for flyering, because I was was a 3-hander that I did in 2010. It was a sketch show.
Okay.
I did with Rob Causey and Carrie Quinlan, which was really good fun. I loved doing that. It was really, really good fun. And so I flyed for that. And my memory of that is our credits were in quite big font on the flyer. And I think that went a bit away to helping.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I'm going to go a show about Wales, a show about my great-grandfather, or I've written for the News Quiz and the Now Show. I don't know if that'll help. Maybe I've written for Top Gear. Maybe the odd person comes across and I'll go like, Top Gear, if I think they might be a fan. But then you've got the whole era of Top Gear and I don't want to get into that. So I think what I want to do is find... Yeah, I don't know. Great question.
Yeah, you could always hurriedly redesign the flyer so it sort of says like the News Quiz in giant letters and then put really small at the top from the writer of.
From the writer of, yeah. I mean, I like the way you said hurriedly redesign the flyer, as though the flyer wasn't hurriedly designed in the first place.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's what's on there at the moment. On the front, it mentions the News Quiz, it mentions the Now Show, it mentions Tourist Trap, the BBC Wales sitcom, and it mentions Ankle Tag, the Radio 4 sitcom I did. And it's got a big Radio 4 logo on it. And then at the back, there's more I don't know. Well, how'd you get anyone to do anything these days?
Oh, it's so difficult.
And I mean that in the broadest possible sense.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I'm just looking at it now. It is a very good one. I like I mean, there's a lot of good bits in it, but I really like the sort of first paragraph on the back, where you just sort of say, Gareth did not spend the First World War in the Navy, nor has he ever been shipwrecked, run a farm. I think that's very good.
Oh, good. Thank you. Please don't. I was going to say, please don't find any faults on it. It is in the printers right now. Like, the last thing I want you to do is go, there's a spelling mistake. Don't do that. Even if you spot one, don't say it.
But yeah, so I guess in terms of, I mean, it's on the flyer. This is a show. What's the sort of show about in brief?
The show is the story of my great-grandfather, who was a farmer in Gower in South Wales, where he lived his life. But what's interesting about him is that he was also a poet.
Right.
And while farming, he would write poems during the day, and then he would perform them in the evening. And they were published in a little book. And he only performed them in about an area, it was only about a 7-mile radius, but he would perform like 3 nights a week. And they were published in a book called The Gower Yarns of Cyril Gwynn, which I've got here.
Right.
So it's a bit about his life and these poems. But the other part of it, which is not mentioned on the flyer, but was what I think the meat of the story really is that in 2022, I was asked to speak about Cyril at an event in the Gower Festival, where the organisers of the Gower Festival had sort of rediscovered Cyril, and they were doing an evening of poetry from Gower and the Swansea area, and Cyril was going to be mentioned, and they asked if I would speak about him, which I wasn't that keen to do because I didn't really know much about him. And what happened in real life is my dad had just died. My dad had died in February of that year. And while going through his stuff, we found notes that my dad had written for when he'd been asked to do a talk about Cyril in the past. So I sort of went, this'll be easy. I'll just read my dad's notes at this event and I'll be home and dry. And then what actually transpired was my dad's notes are very incomplete. So you have me telling the story of Cyril, you also have me trying to make sense of my dad's notes, and you have the story of me doing this event. And so there's all these sort of like threads kind of combine. And fundamentally, through this, what I hope is you get a sense of the difference between me and Cyril. Because we're very different people, it transpires.
Yes. That's incredible. Okay, I'm very excited to dig into that. But yeah, we will be right back. And I'm going to keep on asking questions, which is the less interesting part. And Gareth is going to keep on giving answers, which is that's why you're here. So yeah, see you guys soon. What? I told you I was not to be... Man, if you brought me delivery, I'm really fucking hungry.
Not soon.
Right, okay, in which case, I told you I was not to be disturbed. I'm brooding. It's not like I can do anything else here.
Pretium Airbnb non
Hold me against my will until I pay you. That's not Airbnb terms of contract. Look, I told you the podcast is going to be very profitable. It's just going to take some time.
Verum officium non Nancy says.
Okay, well, first of all, it is a real job. And second of all, I'm also above a real job anyway. So I'm an artist.
Tum festina et medium partem inscribe.
Well, I don't want to.
Voluntates Deus vult.
All right, okay. Fuck's sake. It's so fucking wet here. There's like shit dripping from the ceiling. I don't know what type of stone it is, but it's giving me like dandruff in my hair, except instead of dandruff, it's like forming really small stones, and it really hurts. Okay, welcome to the middle section. Things are a little different this time. My humble ego has suffered a blow. Because last week this happened. And since then, things have gone a little downhill for me. I booked myself an Airbnb in Hull because I wanted to kind of space to reflect. And I did it using Airbnb's pay later scheme. Except it turns out they don't have a pay later scheme. Except they do now, because I haven't paid yet. Anyway, the guy who owns this place isn't happy about it. He thinks he's an Anglo-Saxon monk, and that I'm a captured Viking concubine is like a whole thing. Anyway, normally I'd be proving that I can outdo my guest at their own game, which I can. Gareth and I have a lot in common, which is a good starting point. I'm looking at his interview with the British Comedy Guide here. Both of us started out by doing student radio. What's next? And he won Best Comedy Award, the Student Radio Awards, which I didn't. And that doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. But yeah, I'll admit my confidence has been knocked. I need to get to know me. So, for a change of pace, I've hired someone to interview me. My inner child needs healing. Because he's been kicked in the head by a big horse that exists in my head. It was really honestly brutal. My inner child was on the floor going, It was not a good situation for him. Let's give my little interviewers a call. Hello, it's me, real me. These middle sections have low-key gotten really out of control. This one actually isn't finished. I got lost in a hospital parking lot. This is a long story. And the guest actors I got for the rest of this had to go to bed, which is very reasonable. But tomorrow, we're going to record the rest of this. And I'm very excited because this is Alice Wickersham and Andy Bucks, the duo behind the excellent sketch duo, Low Effort Sketches. They were actually on the show last year. It was a very funny episode. You should go listen to it at Never Is Funny on Spotify. Anyway, within 24 hours, I'm going to replace this disclaimer with the actual sketch. But I didn't want to delay getting this episode out for Gareth by making him wait until I finished my dumbass little side project. So, for now, I hope you enjoyed that really abstract teaser, and keep an eye out for the full thing. And, back to the show. Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the second half of the show. I was thinking in the meantime, I got very excited when you mentioned that before Edinburgh Fringe came up as an option, you'd been thinking about doing it in Cardiff. I hope you do it at some point, because that is where I am based, so I'd be very excited to come and see it.
Great. Yeah, no, I need to do some Wales dates while it's still in work in progress stage.
Yes.
Because this thing I'm definitely still fiddling with it. But there does need to be a point, like I say, where family members can kind of go like, that's not what happened. Or, actually, oh, hang on 1 second. I am not recording. Sorry, carry on.
Brilliant. No, you were just saying about, it'd be good to have family to be able to come. And me as me, I'll tag along with them, sort of pretend I'm a distant relative.
While it is still in a work in progress stage, because this is the thing. I'm tomorrow, at the time of recording, I start my Edinburgh 5 days, where I know it'll get fiddled with a bit. But yeah, definitely, once it's done in Cardiff, I am half expecting members of my family to go, that's not right. But actually, what I hope will happen is that it will jog memories.
Right.
And that people will go, oh, no, there's a thing. Because that's already happened. While I've been doing it, I've been texting people and kind of going, do you know what this means? This note my dad has left, and 1 or 2 of them have now come good. So, yeah, we're getting there. We're filling in the gaps. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, I'm curious about how much has it changed / is changing? Is it very similar to what you originally wrote, or...?
I think it's now changed quite a bit. The gap between the version I wrote in 2023 and did once, and then the version that I did in the Camden Fringe, there were some quite chunky changes to that. When I did it in Machynlleth, I ran a lot more of Cyril stuff to get a sense for what of his flew and didn't.
I see.
So what I felt like I needed to do was really pick the ones that of his work that really shone. So there was a little bit of that. And now I feel like I've whittled it down. So there's fewer, but I think they're better. Do you know, is it I think that was a big part, and making them fit in part of the story. A big part of it was actually couching anything of his in the show correctly, because I think the first time I did it, the gear shifts were too strong.
I see.
I would be doing modern 2020 stuff, and then you're sort of a handbrake turn into something that's literally written 100 years ago.
Right.
And I had a conversation. I was working on a topical thing, and Robin Morgan was there, and he asked what I was doing, and I said, I'd just done this show, and I was talking about it. And he said, you want something that'll just put them in the mindset of the 20s. And I was like, that's exactly what I need to do. And that's just a great excuse to write jokes. I love stuff like that where it's oh yeah, that's a bit. I could write a bit where my job is to put them in the mindset of the 20s.
Right.
And then I write, that's a little puzzle then. And I like that sort of thing. So those bits needed doing. There's a big chunk of Cyril's life that I just glossed over. And again, I was talking to someone about him, and I just mentioned the fact that he was friends with Randolph Churchill, Winston Churchill's son. And it was Ben Partridge who went, is that in the show? And I went, not at the moment. And then as I said it, I was like, why the hell isn't that in the show? That's absolutely ridiculous. And that's actually become one of my favourite bits now.
Yes.
So yeah, no, there's some quite big chunks. And the end, there was an end sitting there that I somehow missed. And once I put everything in place, I was like, oh, hang on. I'd forgotten, this is quite weird, but I don't want to spoil too much, but the night at which I performed in Gower, it ended up being a much weirder evening than I was expecting. I had there was a whole separate adventure of how I got home that night.
Right.
And I don't know how I'd forgotten that. And it wasn't until I'd rewritten the show I was like, hang on, there was this whole other part of the tale that you've forgotten. So, yeah, there's quite a bit, actually, that's been added. And every time something comes in, you kind of have to go okay, what's coming out? And I feel like everything that's come in far outstrips anything I've taken out, so I'm feeling much happier with it. But there's still stuff to go. There's still a couple of... Yeah, without getting into the weeds too much, there are a couple of little gear changes still that I think there's a cleverer way to do this. And there's a couple of beats towards the end where I think it could be cleverer, is I think
Right.
what it is. What it now does is I think it works as a story. I think the story works. But I think now I'm kind of going, is this the funniest way to get from here to here? There's a lot of that stuff going on still.
Which is always, I always find that to be one of the most frustrating things working on something like this, is the stage where you're looking at it and you can go, well, there's something missing here, or there's something that needs to be taken out, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that my experience, I'm so new to this, like, doing your own hour-long show thing. This is all still very new to me, really. I've never done one like this before, and where I've previewed it. So this is all new territory for me. The closest thing I've got is sitcom writing.
Yes.
Where the way you normally write a sitcom, if you're lucky enough to get a series, the dream is that you kind of write them, 6 of them, and then when you get to episode 6, you go back to episode 1 and go, does this still work?
Right.
And it's interesting the times where you kind of go, oh, no, this does not work at all. And maybe in that time you showed it to a producer and you've got notes, or sometimes you've just read it back yourself and gone, oh, with that little bit of distance, I've realised what's gone wrong here. I think sometimes that's what these things, this is me talking now more, not about just a show like this, but about most stuff you work on. You do need a little bit of a gap. And I wonder if that's what happened with me to write this hour in a sort of week of white heat in 2023, still quite shortly after the incident where I'd been invited to Gower to talk. And then I did it, and then I kind of sat on it for about a year before I looked at it again, and then went, oh, wait, no, this is a nice story, but it doesn't quite hold together. And I think that you just read it in a completely different way. You go, right. Because it was part of it, a huge part of it was the way I was performing it. That was the biggest problem. But also, I think that there were things where I went, this isn't quite the way through the story. It's nearly there. And I think with sitcoms, that definitely happens. You kind of... What I find is the first draft of a sitcom, I'm thinking of Ankle Tag now, which is the one I wrote with Ben Partridge for BBC Radio 4 that starred Ellis James, Katie Wicks and Steve Spears. I think with that, a lot of the first drafts would be very long.
Right.
And then it's working out, like, how can we boil this down a bit and whip through it a bit faster? That seemed to happen quite a lot. And I think in sitcoms, one of the things I certainly came to be a big believer of is get in late and leave early.
Right.
Is that you kind of come into scenes a little bit into the action and get out a little bit early so that the whole thing has a bit of forward momentum. That suited Ankle Tag, I think.
That's a great tip, actually. I might try and internalize that. I think in real life as well, I think a lot of people around me would be a lot happier if I got into situations late and left early.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, there's a lot of things where in scenes, rather than seeing someone have the idea, you get a character come in and they're going like, what are you doing? And they're like, I'm doing this. It also just provides a bit of activity and momentum, which I think that's a thing that I hear in a lot of radio sitcoms that I don't like, is where a lot of characters just seem to sort of sit still and talk and no one's doing anything. Like that happens so infrequently in real life. If you think about your life, it is very rare that two people just stand in a kitchen and just talk and there is nothing else going on at the time. And so Ben and I would quite enjoy going, right, so what are they doing while this is happening? And my favourite one is that Steve Spears' character Bob is cooking liver and onions and just stinking the house out. And it just gives this extra set of jokes while it's happening, where they're all trying to have this conversation while the room is filling with steam. It's just a funny thing that's happening, and it gives it a sense of presence and a sense of not quite jeopardy, but it's a bit like this. I'm trying to have this conversation, and he's cooking liver and onions. It all becomes much funnier.
Yes, absolutely. I'm curious about, because you were trying to strip things out, and it must have been quite clear that what is being replaced with was better. But have you had the kind of killing your darling experience of like, I believe this could be really good and I want this to work, but it's just not getting the reaction or something?
So what I'd say is, I did I mentioned it very briefly earlier that I became a writer for the BBC.
Yeah.
So what happened was, there's a job in BBC radio comedy which has changed its name over the years. It used to be the bursary. I think now it's called the contract writer. But back when I did it, you spent a year working inside the BBC on whatever show needed a writer, and that tended to be the topical one. So it's around that time I got very involved with the news quiz and the Now Show. And the other thing that was brilliant about it is you do it as a pair. They employ 2 people every year, and I worked with John Luke Roberts, and I mentioned him earlier, he's absolutely brilliant.
Yes,
we really hit it off, and we ended up writing several things together. We wrote a sitcom together called Bull. We wrote a reunion show for the Goodies, which is on Audible, and yeah, we've worked together loads. He's absolutely brilliant. It was great. But one of the things that I think about that year is really key is the sheer volume of what you churn out. And so I mentioned the news quiz where you were writing 3 pages of jokes per story for Sandy or Miles or whoever the host was. I never did the Andy Zaltzman years, but like that. For the Now Show, it just felt like you were feeding a fire, the amount of material that we would give Stephen Hugh for that. I would write so much material. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed slightly switching off the critical side of things, churning it out as fast as you can, and then stopping and going back and fiddling with it and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that you learn doing a job like that is that you learn to back yourself, and you learn that there will always be more ideas.
Right.
Even if you've sort of gone, I think we've got as far as we're going to get with this, you'll find something else. And the times I remember were around the election episodes, because we did a Now Show every day for a while.
Right.
During the 2010 election. And at that point, you felt like you were more backed into a corner almost, because the deadlines were faster, and it was like, we need an intro for this person, and the trick is never to write 1 intro, the trick is always to write 4.
Right.
Because the moment you write this is one of the things I've learned. I've just been booked to do an award ceremony script later this year, and one of the things I've learned about that is you don't write 1 joke for every category, you write 2 or 3. Because it gives the producers options and the host options, which they prefer.
Yeah,
because it helps. And the other thing is that you'll write better jokes if you know you've got to write another one. I think it's really hard to write 1 joke, but I think it's weirdly, I find it much easier to write 3.
Right,
and then kind of go, okay, right, let's kick these right. Because even while you're writing 1, you're like, oh, hang on, you could do this backwards, and then you sort of do the other. All this to say that I think when you're doing sitcoms, I think all this training, which is very much like joke writing, I think it kind of comes into its own then when you're doing sitcoms.
Right.
Because I think if you are in a situation where there's something that's not working, and it's really not working, you do have the confidence to go, do you know what? Let's just delete the scene. Let's just lose it and do something else. And I think that's got to come from a bit of a place of... You've got to kind of back yourself to go, we'll write something better than this. We'll delete this. And I think that's quite important, really. I think, to be honest, when we did Ankle Tag, Ben Partridge was always brilliant when we would do the sort of second or third draft. Getting to a bit, and he's excellent at being able to go, we can write a better joke than that.
Right.
He's excellent at kind of going, I think there's a better option. And there always is. It's the thing. He is always right that it is worth stopping and going like, okay, right, let's crack this.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was always worth doing. So I think that's it. So there are things where you kind of go like, oh, it's a shame to lose that. But you've got to have the confidence to kind of go, no, we'll come to something better. The other thing is that there are things that you lose. This is more, I'm thinking, in the world of sketches. I've written sketches and I've sent them to people and they've not been picked, and that's absolutely fine. Like, again, with all these things, you send more than will ever get used.
Yes,
and there might be 1 or 2 where you're like, do you know what? I really like that idea. And sometimes you sort of pop it to one side, and then a year or 2 later, an opportunity will come up and you'll revisit it and kind of go, oh, this would work for them.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll give you a really specific example.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
It was a very handy thing for me. There was a show on Radio 4 called, which one was it? It was either called Recorded for Training. It was Recorded for Training Purposes. That was it. Because that show kind of changed its name over the years. It became The Show What You Wrote. but it was called Recorded for Training Purposes, and the idea was that anyone could submit material. And it was at a stage in my career where I was writing for little bits on Radio 4, but I wasn't a regular writer there, so I was still chipping things in. Okay. And they had an episode, it was all about communication. That was the idea, is that they wanted all the episodes to have a theme of communication. And I wrote a sketch about the guy who writes spam emails. And it was in that era where things would be misspelt and they'd have different colours, and then you would get a lot of emails at the time that would have like just blocks of nonsense text in an attempt to jump past the spam filters. It was that era. So I wrote a sketch about that guy, and the sketch was him applying for a job and the guy going, "Your CV makes absolutely no sense," and describing this guy's CV and why he was perfect for the job because of the CV. And I wrote this sketch, and it didn't get picked for the show What You Wrote. And it was one of those things where I went, absolutely fine. They had God knows how many sketches for that. I remember talking to the guys who script edited it afterwards, and they would do huge numbers of sketches. So it was one of those things where I went, that's fair enough. And then I would say 2 years later, I submitted a reworked version of that to Armstrong and Miller.
Okay.
And I got it onto the 3rd series of the Armstrong and Miller TV show.
Right.
And I think it's one of those things where I totally understand why the show What You Wrote didn't go for it. Because they're doing a show about communication. Now I've worked on the other side of those shows. God knows how many sketches they had about email. Goodness knows how many sketches they had about spam email. Just like I can imagine mine was amongst a mulch of a lot of things. And you don't know how far you get in these things. Maybe I got, to the recording and it got cut, or maybe, I don't know. But I can certainly imagine that in a field being slightly crowded out by a lot of similar ideas. In Armstrong and Miller, that idea really felt like it stood alone. It was quite weird and distinct, and it provided a big, loud, obnoxious character for Alexander Armstrong to play as the boss. And I remember kind of thinking, oh, this makes more sense for them. This sits amongst their other sketches much better. So I think that's one where it got turned down somewhere else and it worked elsewhere. And I totally understand in both cases why that happened. So there's a bit of a thing of like, maybe a sitcom's different because it's for the show, as it were.
Right.
But there are things where you can sort of like strip it away and maybe use it another day in a different context. Like you go, that might be handy one day.
Put your darlings in a closet for later as opposed to killing them. Yeah,
maybe. I will say I'm not really precious about anything these days. Not at all. There'll be very little. There's things I would fight for if I thought it was good, and I was like, oh no, that's doing a job. There's a reason that's in there. But like almost joke quality wise, if someone went, oh, that's not funny enough, I will happily delete it and think of something else. Do you know what I think an example would be? When I first thought of Cyril, after I'd done the Gower event, which had inspired me to do the show, the first joke I wrote for the Cyril show, I remember thinking of and going, great, that's how I'm going to open the show. It's a big, funny, bold opening line. It has never, ever worked.
Right.
And I've just gone, that's gone. That's gone. And even though it's almost the joke that made me go, there's a show in this, I reckon I did it twice in total. And I just went, this isn't going to fly. This goes. And I'm genuinely not bothered about that. I'm probably like, yeah, that just doesn't work. But it got me far enough along that I've written the rest of it, and then I can lose the chunk that I thought would be my opening.
Right, brilliant. Yeah, that's a very good skill to have. Okay, so we're kind of at the point in the show where we play a little sample of your work. The trick is, spoken a couple times about this before recording, you've got so much work to choose from. But I suppose it's up to you, really. As I said, you worked on that sitcom Ankle Tag with Benjamin Partridge. Another thing where you played a part in something I'm a very big fan of, which is the Beef and Dairy Network podcast. So, yeah, I don't know if you have a preference for what you'd like to show off.
That's a good question. I will talk about Beef and Dairy Network podcast very briefly. That is so Ben Partridge's thing.
Right.
And it's a really, really fun thing to be part of. And it's great fun where Ben... sort of like explains the conceit. So if people haven't heard the show, you're listening to a fake podcast for the beef and dairy industry, is the idea.
Yeah.
And he interviews comedians and comedy writers as though they are part of that industry. In the Beef and Dairy Network world, I play Alex Neon, who is the Beef and Dairy archivist. And I think one of the things Ben has done that is quite good fun is I think he tries to give people jobs in the world sometimes that have some sort of reflection on their real life character in some way. And because I work a lot with archive, a lot of the comedy shows I work with involve the BBC archive, be that cutting things up for comic purposes or sometimes making straight documentaries about comedians, which I've done a couple of. I know my way around the BBC archive. I know what's there, I know what's not there, and I know the problems with archive. I know why things go missing. I know when you're looking for something, you find something else. Like I've run that race quite a lot. And so when Ben asked me to play this archivist in the Beef and Dairy Network world, it means I can sort of talk about things that I have experienced or heard about through archivist friends, and then just transpose them onto a very beef-based world. Yes. And as well, he'll just sometimes explain a thing where he's like, right, so we're going to do a thing where the archive's been taken over by wolves, and I just need you to explain how that feels. And then we do that. But, it is all really Ben. We all improvise in that world, but Ben is the one who's got this grand plan that I think we sort of all slot into it. And I'm aware sometimes people say something and that will become a thing that then he'll build an episode or future episodes around. And then sometimes it's like, we need to get from this to this. I think as the archivist, I'm often in conversations with Ben. Ben is like, right, I need you to kind of explain why this thing has happened because someone else said this and I need to join dots. I would say, generally speaking, if I am in an episode of the Beef and Dairy Network, it means it's been a very, very difficult episode to make. Because if I'm in an episode, then it means there's archive, and that means Ben has to make fake archive. And that means I think it becomes one of the ones. I think I'm very proud of the fact that all the Beef and Dairy Network episodes I'm in are quite knotty, complicated ones with lots of characters and effects, which I'm all for. I don't know how Ben feels about it, but I think if you listen to just the episodes I'm in, I think they're the most complicated episodes.
Right. Okay, so yeah, possibly not very good, but as for specifically you, maybe when you're sort of a pawn in Ben Partridge's Machiavellian
I'll
scheme.
take that. I think he'd be happy with that as well. Yeah.
So yes, in that case, there's Ankle Tag, and there's also your own podcast as well, which...
Yes, well, it's up to... I don't know which to pick. So, what would you prefer to play? Because I've talked a bit about Ankle Tag, which is a sitcom about a man who is released from prison, and he's on an ankle tag and goes to live with his son and daughter-in-law, which was great fun to make. I think the interesting thing about Ankle Tag, looking back, there's a couple of things. I'm really proud of the plotting on Ankle Tag. I think we realised sometime during series 1 that the key to a good episode of Ankle Tag is a big lie. Is that there's a character who's got a bit, or not so much a lie. That's a bit. There's a big moral quandary in every episode. There's like a moment where someone is wrestling with something, and the character dynamics we've got means they can all have a different solution to how you get out to that problem. So I was very fond of Ankle Tag. The interesting thing I think about it is we did 3 series. Series 1 and 2 were recorded in front of an audience in the radio theatre, and it was a fantastic thing to do. Series 3, we had dates booked in the radio theatre, and then that happened in 2020. And that meant we had to record them remotely. And one of the things that happened with that was, I think we were one of the first things recorded remotely. It was very, very early on in 2020 because the scripts were all written. We had to write a little bit more because obviously they were meant to have audience laughter in them.
Oh, I see.
And now there was going to be no audience. So I remember Ben and I having to go through and add about 300, 400 words to each one to try and just make sure that they hit time. And there were a couple of other little tricks we did, which is, again, it's that thing I was saying that nothing ever happens in a silent room because then you could hear that everyone was on different microphones. So our producer, for the 3rd series, it was Adnan Ahmed. He was like, if they could have these conversations outside, that would be great because then we can put a little bit of birdsong behind it and then it just masks what's going on.
Yes.
So it was Adnan Ahmed produced it, and David Thomas was the sound designer on it. And I think they played an absolute blinder in really hiding the fact that it had been done remotely, to the point that loads of people don't think it was and think that it was recorded altogether just before COVID hit.
Right.
And I got really annoyed then when things like The Archers started recording remotely, and we're doing these episodes where it's like, we're just going to do one guy on his own monologuing. And I was like, guys, a month ago we had an 8-person cast and it worked fine. I remember getting really annoyed. I think Adnan did such a good job. I think he did such a good job that no one noticed what a good job he'd done. I went, well, he must have done this in a studio. So that's the thing with Series 3. It was the COVID one, and it sounds great, and it sounds so good. No one noticed Adnan's brilliant work. That's my feeling on that. Yeah, so you could, if you wanted to play a clip from Ankle Tag, I think that's probably the best example of my sitcom writing. I would say.
Excellent.
Oh, so it's a good example of my sitcom writing. I've done all sorts of different bits and bobs, but I am very fond of Ankle Tag.
Okay, fantastic. So we will find a clip from that, and here it comes.
Ankle Tag by Gareth Gwynn and Benjamin Partridge. Toast, Griff?
Oh, yes, please.
I've been thinking, this meeting with the priest later about Carris's school place, can't you just go to Kerrymead Primary? It's at the end of our road.
Alice, she is going to the Catholic school. Full stop. Or as I think they say, Amen.
But we're not Catholic.
Look, God realises people want the best for their children. That's why he set up his son with a sweet woodworking apprenticeship. The Catholic school is our only option. We're Catholics now. It's like Henry VIII never happened.
Morning all.
Oh, morning, Bob. You're looking smart.
As smart as you can look, wearing an ankle tag.
Do you want some toast?
No, I can't risk getting jam on my suit.
Oh, hang on, Alice. When Dad's wearing a suit, you can't trust him until he's put on the tie. Black tie, funeral. Blue tie, court date. Red tie, definitely going to convince someone he can look after their savings.
Oh, I love that red tie. Anyway, it's a new me today, purple tie.
Oh, are you becoming a UKIP councillor?
No. The EU is the world's greatest gift to a fraudster. The number of European grants I got. Somewhere in Malta, they're still waiting for that windfall.
So what are you up to?
Well, last week I got talking to a guy who organises entertainment at the OAP home. Long story short, I am now in charge of bingo. It's 30 quid and as many sausage rolls as you can eat. And I get to keep the bingo machine at home, which will come in handy teaching Carys to count.
Dad, I'm not having my daughter learning to count from a bingo machine. She'll be learning at the foot of a kindly nun in a Catholic school, potentially in Latin.
What's this?
Well, we've been thinking about Carris's school choices.
Choices? She's only a year old. Griff, we didn't think about your school until the night before. You went on your first day wearing one of my ties. Not the red one, obviously.
That's why your opinion is not valid.
There's a school at the end of the road. She can go there.
No way. Kerrymead's recent Ofsted report's like a deleted chapter from Oliver Twist. I've set up a meeting with a priest this afternoon. We are going to get her into St. Olaf's.
The Catholic school? But we're not Catholic. You're not Catholic, are you, Alice? You don't look it.
Like almost every parent of a child at St. Olaf's, we are going to finesse the facts.
You can't lie. Not to a priest.
Oh, why do you care? You're not religious?
I am religious.
Were you converted in prison? Oh, you weren't radicalised, were you?
No, but I did dabble. You see, when staying at Her Majesty's pleasure, you're given jobs to do. Canteen, library, that sort of thing. However, if it's a religious holiday, you get a day off.
So you became a Christian just for the days off?
Well, better than that. Just after Easter, you go Sikh, ready for Vaisakhi. Dabble in Judaism for Yom Kippur. Islam for Eid, but be on your toes. You don't want to be forced to do Ramadan. That was a shock. Jump to Hindu for Diwali, back to Sikh for the birthday of Guru Nanak, skull cap on for Hanukkah, and then convert to Christianity in time for Christmas. Happy New Year. 28 days later, Happy Chinese New Year.
You can't convert to being Chinese.
You tell HMP Wandsworth that.
Unbelievable.
I've lied a lot, son, but never to a man of the cloth.
Well, what about when you change religion every 5 minutes?
Well, I was doing them a favour. They were grateful for the numbers. especially the guy from the Jehovah's Witnesses. You try going door to door when they're all locked.
We haven't got a choice. It turns out you're meant to get them baptised at under 6 months. We're going to have to really lay on the piousness. I'm talking Bible on the shelf, Pope on the wall, songs of praise on the telly.
Alec Jones on the stereo.
Steady on, we're not maniacs.
Great.
Brilliant. That was so good. I gotta stop, because it's becoming a bit, because obviously this happens every time, and every single time I make a joke about, like, oh, it's funny because I'm pretending like I just heard it, but we didn't actually hear it. But I've got to reel that in now because it's coming like every single episode.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we're now coming towards plugs for things. I mean, centrally, of course, the Cyril show.
Yes, if you are in Edinburgh, I don't know when this is coming out, but I'm going to be in Edinburgh for the 20th to the 24th of August at 4 p.m. in the Hotel Indigo. So if you fancy coming to see the Cyril show work in progress, it says work in progress, it's in pretty decent shape. It's a show. It's an entertaining hour of comedy. I'd love you to come and see it. So come on down. Hotel Indigo, 4 p.m, 20th to the 24th of August. And the other thing that I should probably push is the podcast that I present with Esselteers called I'm So Not Over It, where each week we take a month in history and we take turns. One of us presents the key events of that month to the other and we chat about them. And it's a mixture of, sometimes it's the politics and sometimes it's the big news stories. A lot of the times it's quite small stories that you might have forgotten and a lot of the sort of pop culture and things like that. It started as an interview podcast.
Oh, okay.
Called the Zennial Dome, where we got people who are Zennials, that crossover of Millennials and Gen X. And we interviewed people about that. And then between series, we started to do these episodes where we looked at the month in history. And there was just so much in that. And they're really good fun. We found some really bizarre things. There's some surprising things. The amount of times Richard Branson turns up in a story. You'll be covering a story and you think Richard Branson is nowhere near it. And then suddenly they'll mention Richard Branson is there. That happens a lot.
Do you have a sort of jingle for that? Like a Branson
We
jingle?
should have a Richard Branson jingle. We should. To be honest, we keep thinking about whether we start a Patreon. And one of the ideas that Esselt has had is that our top tier should be the Branson. Because he comes up so often in the show when you least expect it. Yeah, so it's a podcast about 1977 to the present day, and somehow it is also a podcast about the peculiar career of Richard Branson.
That's brilliant. Well, that sells it very well. I also love, you got through the sentence very quickly, which is good, but because you're doing it at the Hotel Indigo, the plug for that starts out very suspicious because you sort of go like, well, for the next few days, I'm going to be at a hotel in Edinburgh. So if anyone fancies coming to stay.
It's a bizarre series of events that have led to this. Yes. Yeah. Hotel Indigo, which is on York Place. There's 2 Hotel Indigos. It's actually, I'm glad you've mentioned this. There's 2 Hotel Indigos in Edinburgh. I'm in the one in York Place, 4 p.m, 20th to the 24th.
Fantastic.
Come down. Say hello.
And obviously I will drop all of that information in the show notes. Although it would be nice if, I don't know, if this audio could become like clickable sometime. That would be good.
Can't be far away from that being a thing.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely.
And goodbye everyone. Go see Cyril.
Brilliant. And also I'll do it in Cardiff sometime. People can come and see it. Oh, and other places. It'll happen.
It'll happen. Hello, and thank you for making it all the way to the end of the show. Now, you can find the show on Instagram at NeverAsFunny, all one word, all lowercase. And now it is time for special thanks for some special people. First of all, Cambrian Chronicles for providing the voice of the monk, and Alice Wickersham and Andy Bucks of Low Effort Sketches for providing the voices of Alice Wickersham and Andy Bucks of Low Effort Sketches. I saw them perform at the Edinburgh Fringe last year, and they are very, 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 very good. The next place you can catch them in person is the Birmingham Comedy Festival on October 12th. Also, of course, as always, special thanks to the magnificent Chloe Bilson.
That